Hi, this is Lori from CustomizedWalls.com. I'm one of the moderators for the interior design community on Google+, and we're here with a great show ahead. We're actually going to be talking about ICFF in New York City. Woohoo! I didn't actually get to go, but some of my great moderators did. And I'm going to start by introducing everyone at the bottom here. And we're going to start with Veronica Miller. She's right next to me on the screen. So Veronica, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Veronica Miller. As you've heard, I am the CEO and founder and all that good stuff of Medenos.com, and also the founder of Blog Tour. And we were in New York twice this year, once in March for the Architectural Digest show, and again now for ICFF and Wanted. So very exciting show, lots to talk about.
Absolutely. And now we have Susan Sarah, our fabulous moderator. Introduce yourself, Susan.
Oh, well, you can just keep going, Lori. Hi, everyone. Susan Sarah, Kitchen and Bath moderator for the interior design community and president of Susan Sarah Associates. And I've gone to ICFF for quite a number of years, and I attended this year as well. So looking forward to this discussion.
Next, we have, awesome, we have Sarah Nielli. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. I'm Sarah, and I'm the e-design monitor for the interior design community and the co-founder of My Doma Studio. And I didn't get to go to ICFF this year, but I'm really excited to hear about what everybody else saw and the highlights and chat with everybody.
Next, we're going to introduce Leslie Carruthers. We won't see her video, but you'll see her gorgeous picture. Leslie?
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. I am thrilled. I actually was at ICFF this year because I was on vacation in New York, and Veronica Miller there was nice enough to invite me to join in for a couple of the Blog Tour New York City events, which I really enjoyed, and then I was able to go see Susan Sarah, who was part of DXB's launch, and that was fun party. And I am the social media PR moderator for the interior design community and the CEO of the Kaleidoscope Partnership. So it's great to be here with everybody today.
Fantastic. And next to her we have Leanne. Leanne, tell everybody what you do and who you are.
How long do you have? I don't know. I'm Leanne Wood Newman, and I own a PR firm called Flying Camel Advertising Design and PR. Near Toronto, Ontario, but I also my agency manages the social media for both the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, KBIS, and the National Kitchen Bath Association and KBA. And I did attend ICFF this year for the first time, and I loved it, and I'm happy to share.
Ooh, super exciting! And then we have Jeffrey Johnson, our moderator for Inspiration. Jeffrey, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Johnson, a founder of Jeffrey Design LLC here in Dallas, Texas, and Inspiration moderator for Google Plus Interior Design Community. And this is my CFF, and it's one of my favorite shows to attend. Can't wait to share.
Fantastic. Iris, I've never met you, but Veronica says wonderful things. You can say hi to everyone and introduce yourself.
Hi. I'm Iris from the Netherlands, and I've joined ICFF with the Blog Tour. Very exciting, my first time. And I'm from the Netherlands, so very excited to join, and a little bit nervous. But I loved it, and there were a lot of Dutch designers at the ICFF too, so it was very nice. I enjoyed it very much.
Fantastic. And last but not least, our Ann McDonald. She's fantastic and one of our moderators. Ann, introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Lori. My name's Ann McDonald. I'm the design business moderator for IDC. I have two companies, my coaching company, which is annmcdonald.net, and my design company, which is Couture Chateau.
Fantastic. Now, this particular show, it's one I really wanted to get to. I just didn't have, I couldn't fit it into my schedule. But the pictures I was watching, everyone, sort of experience it. What were some of the highlights you found, Veronica, and what would you think our audience would want to know about going if they haven't been before?
Well, I think the overall look and feel of ICFF is always a little bit more in the general direction of modern design, with a fairly healthy touch of contract and hospitality design as well. So there are some brands that you don't see at other consumer-facing shows. which makes it quite interesting. They've, over the last few years, have really built an interesting mix of, very, very strong and big brands mixed in with a lot of artisans. So you have a lot of international pavilions coming to ICFF. I felt that was actually richer than it has been in years past. So we have the British Pavilion, that's always there. They were celebrating their 20th anniversary at ICFF this year. But then many others, like Iris was saying, there was there were the Dutch, there were the Norwegians, Brazil, Spain. Everybody is represented. So there's some great, interesting stuff happening within those pavilions because those local governments support even smaller artisans to come to a bigger show, and so the small artisans sort of ride on the coattails of the bigger brands and of their government programs. And I found that was a really enriching experience. ICFF was very big this year. They actually pushed into a second hall for textiles and additional design booths. So it was actually very, very full. Not quite able to cover the whole thing this time, and didn't realize that there were so many additional exhibitors. So it was good. Most of my life is spent at these shows with the artisans to try to find new talent and really good new stuff, and there was quite a bit of that.
Sure. Now, there was one. You attended the DXV event as well, and I'm sure Susan Sarah will want to say some stuff about that too. But what was your? Did you consider that part of it, part of the festivities? I mean, all of these other activities that are going on around town.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. There's New York Design Week, the NYCX Design, and what's interesting to note there is that they're a little bit fragmented in terms of a lot of the event, Freeze, and other major shows having actually taken place the weekend prior. Then there's 2-3 days of not a whole lot. So the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they sort of let it dip down a little bit. And then our evening with Hearst and Newell Turner at DXV was sort of not just a great blog tour kickoff, but also really kind of kicked in that second phase of the whole design week, with lots of events around town. I mean, it was just endless. DXV was very crowded. It was just it was great to see everybody again. Leslie was there, hadn't seen each other in years. So it was really good to have everybody come together. Saturday night, blog tour was invited to the ICFF opening night gala, which was really cool at MoMA. I mean, who gets to celebrate at MoMA when it's closed? And it's just such a buzz. Bobby Burke has his annual open house that he co-hosts with Jamie Derringer from Design Milk. So the whole city just comes alive with design, and you really can't cover it all, but I think we did okay at sort of pulling out all the highlights.
That's fantastic. Now, Susan, what did you think about the DXV event? I know you were really excited about going. We saw all of your car come. Tell us about it.
Yeah, no, I was excited about going, and I am one of the designers on the design panel for DXV. I designed a kitchen, and it's a new luxury brand from American Standard. I will say this: it almost seems like the brand has always been here. It feels like an established brand. Of course, we have the backing of, American Standard, but for a new brand, everything, all the attention to detail is present, and it, from the beautiful designs to how they're displayed to the beautiful showroom to the communication and the messages. It's just. And the logo itself, it's a wonderful brand. I think it's right on in terms of the styling. I think it's very, you can go in many different directions with the products, from more traditional to, to contemporary. But there's, in my opinion, there's a quiet elegance about the products, which is very, very attractive. And in the event that we were at, I mean, it doesn't get any better. We had the people from House Beautiful. We had Newell Turner there, Jay Gould, the CEO of American Standard. He said some words. We had Blog Tour there, which was amazing. So, and then we had the New York design community. I mean, come on, we had everything. And it was the quintessential New York event. And wasn't it great, Veronica?
It was great. Where's your printed magazine from DXV?
Oh yes, it's
It has to be a show and tell, otherwise
I'll find it. It might be upstairs.
I saw everyone was sharing their picture. Now, Veronica, while she searches for that, I wanted to ask you, your blog tour this year had a real international, well, it always does, has an international flair, but how many different countries were represented in blog tour this particular time?
This was really exciting, and it did on purpose for sure, because ICFF and Wanted are both so international, so it just seemed to make a lot of sense. This time we had the Netherlands represented. How do you say? Are you from Holland or the Netherlands? What do you say?
Well, we say both. We say both.
You people confuse me. It's not just the language; it's also the thing. I mean, just be from Holland. Maybe think. So we had Holland. We had Anya from Copenhagen. Susan was stalking her the entire time. Then we had two sort of British folks with us, Carole Poirot, Mademoiselle Poirot from London, and also Annabelle Bird from Insideology. And Carole is actually originally from Paris via Germany. And then to top that off, we had Regina Sturrock from Toronto, who is actually from Austria. So it was a really interesting melting pot. We had linguistics nightmare the whole time.
I imagine. But what did they feel about the show? I mean, I'm gonna ask Iris. How do you pronounce your name again?
Sorry?
You don't pronounce it Iris. How do you pronounce your name?
Iris is good in
Okay. What did you feel about the show in terms of the international feel? Did you feel like it was representing many different countries, or did you feel like it was an American style show?
No, yes. For me, as I don't know so much about the American designers, for me there were a lot of brands I didn't know, but there were also a lot of European brands, and in fact also a lot of Dutch brands, and the Norwegian stand. I loved that stand. It was really, really nice, and I think it was a good mix. For me in the Netherlands, and coming out of a very northern European country, the design we have is yes, somewhat more minimalistic style. So it was very good for me to see how in America or in New York design is presented, and what is modern and what is contemporary, and the differences in between those countries was very interesting.
Yeah, I think the same thing, and we actually talked in another show about how you might go to a show that is incredibly modern, and then there will be bits and pieces of it that make their way into other design, which I think is fantastic. I know when I was in London on blog tour, I was definitely picking up on little things that I could bring back to my designs that we do for wallpaper and wall coverings. But is that something that you think would be really a big thing for the brands that you work with? Leanne, I'm going to ask you, because you work with a lot of your PR agency, so you work with a lot of brands. Is that something that they look at?
I wanted to just jump back a little bit, Lori, because I think if you had walked into to ICFF, you would have felt it was very kind of like what we saw for Design Week in London last year. In fact, the whole 3 or 4 aisles I kind of have, if we were looking at the show, starting at the right, was all brands from the UK, which was great. So it was kind of, I had this nice little flashback to Blog Tour London, and going through to 100% Design, to Tent London, to all of those great shows, to Decorate. So it was it was really nice representation of the UK brands as well as some of the European brands. And now that I've said that, I forgot the original question.
Well, I was curious if the brands, for instance, brands that you might represent, are they looking at these shows hoping that they can pick pieces of the style, but maybe not, copying that same aesthetic, because sometimes it's so European. The European design is so different from what is the social norm here in the United States.
Well, I think when people go to that show and designers go to that show and they're so inspired by seeing the differences, I'm hoping that North American brands will go, wow, the designers are really keying into that. The designers love that style. The designers love that aesthetic. And I'm really hoping, and even the way some of the booths and everything were done, I'm really hoping that North American brands will look at that, take some of that kind of, where are they getting this inspiration from? How are they pushing the envelope? I think North American brands should look at that and think about that when they're doing their planning, their R&D, their booth design, their everything. I think there's lots of great global inspiration that people need to look at.
I think that's fantastic. And I know that a lot of the brands that are, from the UK or from other countries, and specifically the ones I've talked to that are from the UK, they're really looking to get into showrooms here in the United States. Do you think that this is a really great springboard for them to do that? And I want, Veronica, I'm going to talk to you again, too, because you mentioned that there are government-assisted programs that bring some of these artisans here. Do they help them make that final connection so that they can make that happen, exporting?
Some do. The Brits are represented for the most part at ICFF by the BEDG, that's the British European Design Group, I guess. And they work very closely with the UK government, the UKTI, that's the investment fund that helps businesses in general in Britain, but also has an export department that is very specifically focused on helping UK brands, UK being a small island, get traction both in Europe and beyond Europe. And so there's definitely financial aid. And then it really kind of depends on the individual brand. And there is still a very big discrepancy between what we see. And you send a bunch of Americans to London for a week, as you know. Everybody wants to say, oh my God, why are you not in the States? Why are you not in the States? Great, and you know it, Lori, great wallpaper, all the surface material, the surface designs are especially so strong in Europe. Why are they not all over here? And the combination that plays into that decision is mentality. Simply, it's a fear in the people themselves, not really understanding this incredibly scary and overwhelming U.S. market, and then also not having the right logistics in place. Now, that's somewhat easier overcome in terms of surface design with textiles and wallpaper, perhaps. Not so much. I know several brands that we've worked with very closely in the past, doing lighting, for instance, really struggled with that.
Right.
Because now you're talking, now there's UL approval, now there's all kinds of technical issues, there's breakage, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And it's not that that's not overcomable, but it is difficult. And I know a lot of, particularly UK brands, I also know a lot of German brands that will simply almost stick their head in the sand and say, it's too much for us to worry about, we'll have to have a business model that works locally. And
it is a consideration, too, for the appliance companies. That's a huge hurdle to overcome, is just the different electrical systems, the different, like the aesthetic, beyond the aesthetic, there's everything behind and all the standards and everything that are different in North America. But I'm sure there's so many brands that kind of don't have those kind of obstacles to overcome. And just another thing, what the question before and what Veronica's addressing as well, in terms of things like the booth design and styling of their product, I'm hoping that, for example, at KBIS we have a great new awards program called the Innovation Booth Design, and I think for people to, to really make that next level in booth design, they need to be taking inspiration globally. So ICFF was a really great place to see how some of the European brands are presenting themselves.
I'd like to jump in, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing about these shows, such as ICFF, such as the shows in London, such as the AD show, the difference you see between those shows and, quite frankly, a show like KBIS is that you see the thought, you see incredible thought that is put into everything, into the products, each and every product, each and every line, each and every material. You see thought and creativity, and you see it as well in the booth. The booths wanting to put their best foot forward, as they should. And the thing is, it doesn't take a lot to do that. You can have a minimalist approach, and even a warm minimalist approach, but have a designer really design it and put some creativity toward it, some time, quality time, and you can get a wonderful result. And we should see more of that. I think that's sort of what Leanne is saying as well.
Well, I also noticed, we were talking about this, I think, Leanne, if you remember with KBIS, I don't know if you were in this specific hangout, but you might have been, where we had the cabinet company. I'm like blanking. that was right near us. What was that cabinet company? Wellborn Cabinets.
Yeah. And
And they had the turquoise cabinets, and they said when they first went to paint them turquoise, everyone was, all of their staff was saying, oh, that's going to be ugly. Everyone's going to hate it. And they said, well, think about the color being a '57 Chevy. And I think that I know that some North American manufacturers don't employ that creativity from designers to come in and design the booth, and maybe that's a different approach.
So good case in point there. What was probably the most talked about portion of the Wellborn booth? Exactly.
The turquoise cabinetry, which was,
and that's the starting point. That's the starting point for them. It's like create the conversation and then go through the rest of the booth. That's a perfect example, Lori.
But you know what I think it is? I think if these manufacturers think of one word, and that is emotion, make the booth generate emotion when people come in. What is the emotion that you want to communicate for your brand? What is it? It needs to have emotion, and that will have it'll strike a feeling.
And you know what we do in the States still a lot? We become trade shows look a little bit like a retail store, and the cabinet company would put as many doors up as they possibly can.
Exactly. I was just going to say that too.
We can look at that stuff later. In fact, you know what? Yes. One of the biggest threats to trade shows has always been the internet, because people see products way before they can see it at a trade show. So now brands have questioned the validity of that big investment. Well, the thing is, there's a big reason for that investment. One of them is the personal engagement and the touching and the feeling and the community and the networking and all of that. But it doesn't mean that we have to replicate what we're doing. It doesn't mean, I thought Wilson Art did a great job. They were a blog tour sponsor this time for us. And it was great. They showed absolutely no product. No new product at all. They had a student chair competition.
From the University of Houston.
That's what they were exhibiting. Huh?
From the University of Houston.
Exactly. And it was so great to see these amazing projects, and they were actually very monochromatic. They used, I think, 2 or 3 finishes on these chairs, and that was their story. And I think the story part is a really, really important and often overlooked element, because what is it that people retain from having a conversation with a brand representative, or with a designer for that matter, with anybody? You remember the story. Yeah. Yes, you'll remember a cool product, something that totally stands out. Absolutely, have that pièce de résistance, but also then have a story to tell. We had the opportunity with Blog Tour at ICFF to speak to pretty much all of the representatives present at the Norwegian Pavilion. This is a booth you would probably normally walk by, touch and feel some of the throws. Most of it was fabric-based, or a lot of it anyway, and kind of keep on going. And so now we had a chance to stand and hear each of these makers talk about why they did something. One guy spent, Iris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he talked 10 minutes about one cheese plate. It was, but you know what, it was great because there was a thought process that went into what he did. There was a reason why his grain was on the diagonal. It was for a geometric pattern. Things you would never know if you walked past and said, ooh, nice cheese plate, see you later. Forget it already by the time you get to the next booth. So having a story, having a compelling story, having these student designers saying what they were thinking when they created their pieces is something that you take with you, and that's what allows you to get away with a very minimalist look. And you don't have to do the rod and tray.
That's right.
No one should. But you can have something very minimal and a great story.
Yeah, you don't need a million cabinets in a cabinet like we often see in the cabinet displays at KBIS. We get it. You need a few that are, emotional and creative and that show the possibilities and get excitement, generate emotion. I fully agree with you.
I'd like to break in.
Sure.
If I can, Lori.
Yeah.
Just for the folks watching who really want to know the highlights of ICFF itself, as someone who attended it just, on vacation and just walked around and was able to see everything. And Jeffrey, you were able to do that as well, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so I just want to say that for me, so taking it to a little different level in the conversation or a different area, some of the things that were really, really impressive, if you want to know, to me, I'm sure everybody would agree, the lighting was unbelievable. There were so many breakout lighting manufacturers as well as ways to light. I have never seen anything like it. It was like the star of the show. And from what I understand, and I did not go to Wanted Design, which is you were the media, I think their media partner, Veronica, but the lighting there, from what I saw in the pictures, was just unbelievable. So I would say get ready for all kinds of incredible lighting. And on that note, my friends at Residential Lighting Magazine had an editor there, and they'll be coming out with a best of ICFF on the lighting end. So if you want to, see that, you can actually, check that issue when they come out with that. And then I think the other thing that was a real highlight from just maybe a trend perspective, and you guys can back me up, was the materiality of all of the different pieces that were there. The way the materials were used together was very innovative, and Susan, as you said, and Veronica, thoughtful. So many designers were very, very thoughtful and innovative in the way they combine materials, whether it was furniture or lighting. Did you all find that as well? That materiality aspect to what was there?
Yes, definitely. I wonder if it has to do with something like, I saw a lot of retro, a lot of refreshed, retro but new, a refreshed retro, which we've seen for a few years now, but it's continuing its march toward creativity year after year. By using these different materials and similar familiar shapes. I saw some mid-century furniture, quite a bit. They keep bringing back of course I'm biased, I'll admit, the Danish iconic furniture, which was out of production. We're seeing more and more shapes, and you'll see that's feeling in lighting and furniture and in other things. And of course you always see the organic shapes at a high quality show like this. So you see the beautiful lines and the beautiful organic shapes. So those are a few things that I saw, along with, of course, lots of neutrals, and the Italian tiles were amazing, just amazing. Just
Did you find, Susan, because you said organic shapes, I felt like I saw a little bit less live edge wood.
I've been seeing that.
Which I've been kind of ready for that.
Oh, please, thank you.
But you know what? And what I saw way more of, metals, I felt were stronger. A lot of coppers, a lot of rose gold.
Yes.
Brass, of course, being huge. And slightly more, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was sort of my take, and I admittedly had a bit of a stressful day when we were at ICFF, but I felt like there was a lot of a slightly more pared down design, slimmer lines, smaller tables, things that were not quite as bulky and chunky and block of wood painted gold kind of thing, but much more refined, a lot of acrylic and glass in different colors.
I think that's what I'm feeling too. In fact, I was wondering, Veronica, at the start, and I was looking through my images, I was wondering, am I seeing less pattern in many products? I don't know. I may be feeling, if I look at my images, there's so many of them are pattern free, so many of them. So I am wondering about that, and wonder what you think as well, and Iris, and Jeffrey for that matter.
Jeffrey, why don't you pop in? What was your feeling? I think we're having problems, Jeffrey. How about you, Veronica?
I can hear you fine. Can Iris? I would love to hear. I know we did a little tabletop conversation at our last dinner about everybody's favorites. Most of them were from ICFF.
Really?
Yes.
What was your favorite thing?
My favorite thing?
Yes.
On the ICFF, I saw, it's hard to choose, but I love the lamp from Grey Pens, made out of paper. Don't know if you saw them. Carbon is called, I think, like the paper boxes.
Huh.
Okay.
Well, I love that one. And I also love the Tom Dixon. I love always the use of the material, and in fact, me being a minimalist, I love color used by the material, so that's a perfect match for me. And from the American brands, it's hard for me to say that so many new things that I can't pop up one now, but I will on my blog definitely say something about that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming too. But I know you have to take off. But
yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I love to join you here.
National show, so we can all pick it up. But thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Okay, thank you too.
Thanks for Sparkle.
Bye, Iris.
Bye.
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 So Jeffrey, you had something special going on. Tell us about your event. Are you a little bit delayed?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I want to say about the ICFF show, and I don't know if you can relate to that or not, I felt like all the shapes that I saw at the show kind of reminds me like when you walk into a chemistry lab, you know, the different glass that they use to mix chemistry. It seemed like you noticed that all the light fixtures and different shapes, you know, and saw a lot of what I would call geometry utensils that you use to do geometry, and I noticed that all the different you know, whether it's table, base, or whatever, it's just the way it's shaped, and that's all I ever thought of. You know, when I was walking through, I kept feeling like I was in a lab, or if I was in a mathematical department. I don't know, it's just really weird, but I really found it very fascinating because, you know, it's just the different shapes and the, you know, the different finish, like Veronica was saying, you know, the pingo, the copper, and all of that.
You know,
Tabletop they use for copper base. You know, it was just really, really fascinating to see all the different materials that they use, and I really thought this show was very exciting, even better than it was last year.
Wow.
You know, Lori, this was, I think, my 5th design show this year, just since January, and it's funny, I sort of called this year the year of how I see it personally, of mixed messages. So I agree with what Jeffrey's saying. when you see a little bit of industrial mixed with organic shapes, and you see retro mixed with modern, and you see all these styles that are kind of, you know, mixing with one another and making new babies. You know, I feel like that's what I have seen quite a bit of this year.
Susan, do you think we're transitioning then? You know, because there's been so many, like we've had the industrial, we've had the retro, right? Do you think they are starting to mix and something new is going to happen?
Well, I mean, Veronica also goes to more design shows than I do. But I think there's a renewed appreciation for the beauty of the, you know, the mid-century forms. And yes, we've seen that for some years, but it's different now. So I feel that there is renewed inspiration, renewed creativity, maybe a renewed confidence to look at the past and have a different point of view toward the future. You know, maybe that there's not a pressure to invent something new, but to just create something new, but with an eye toward the past. What do you think, Veronica?
I agree. I think generally that the confidence was there this year, and that's something we haven't seen in R&D in a really long time.
Yes.
We were playing it safe. We were playing for pieces that could fit in a lot of different environments to make sure you don't lose a single customer. Just because things just weren't going very well. And I think for the first time, and I felt the same way in Milan, Milan was exuberant. And now more of the same. I think there's really a sense of, you know, let's play, let's have some good time, let's bring the sexy back into trade shows, which is sort of my mantra. It's going to be my mantra until we change it. So I think there's a lot of really good, juicy stuff happening.
Yeah,
like,
I do too.
I agree.
Kind of, you know, and the sky's the limit.
I love that. I love that.
I mean, you still see some overarching trends. You see some overlapping an overview of trends sometimes, but more often than not, you have to look carefully to say, oh yeah, that's a touch industrial, just a touch. Mm-hmm. That's a touch mid-century. It's not so always. It's not always so obvious. So that does bring new forms into the marketplace.
I agree, Susan, and I want to say a couple of things there on that note in terms of new forms and innovation. And Jeffrey, to your point about mathematical as well, that's a really interesting point. And I think that comes in a little bit because of all the 3D printing that's being used. I don't know if I know that you all didn't have as much of a chance this time to see everything there on the blog tour, but there was a lot of younger designers that were using 3D printing in their production process, which I found fascinating. And of course, that is based on mathematics. So the fact that, Jeffrey, you're seeing that just from a designer standpoint, that there were so many products there that had that kind of chemistry, mathematical look to them, I 100% agree. It was all about the structure. And I don't know if you all remember, even from Las Vegas Market last year, when I was there, I was talking a bit about how structure was what I was seeing. Like, you know, the form of a chair actually, you know, completely unwrapped, and it was just a structure. The same thing I think we saw this year in lighting. But speaking of that, I have a Facebook album I've made before this call, which I'll post up to the comments here so that everybody can see quite a few pictures. But the student work, I don't know if y'all had even a chance to see that, but most interesting to me was the student work at ICFF. For those of you who don't know, ICFF invites students from several of the major design schools around the country to participate. Pratt, SCAD, Parsons, the Cleveland Industrial Design Department, Veronica mentioned. Wilson Art had a competition with the University of Houston students. So there was a lot of school work there, but the most, and to speak also earlier, Susan, you mentioned something about you know, smaller scale pieces, and there has been a lot of work going on right now on the overall level in the U.S. about small scale living. I don't know if y'all saw it, but I just put something up on my Facebook page about an article that came out in Fast Company where students at MIT's lab or MIT's lab, actually developed a 200 square foot module space that works by voice command and gesture command. And you must go see that. It's absolutely incredible. So, and then SCAD at the ICFF, their students, I don't know if y'all saw that, I posted again and up on my Facebook profile, but they had a exhibit there where it was just a wall, and each section of that wall came out and formed a bed or seating or an armrest, and you pulled like a drawer out of the wall. It was something I'd never seen anything like that before. It was completely innovative and new. And even on the overhead, these drawers pulled out and they had lighting in them. So literally it was a wall that was about 2 feet thick. And that wall itself made every kind of piece of furniture except for a kitchen.
I think I saw a picture of you sitting on that.
Yes, exactly. It was unbelievably thought-provoking. And then the other piece on the student.
How comfortable was that, first off? Was it not comfortable, or was it comfortable?
Yeah, it was totally uncomfortable, but it was uncomfortable, I'm going to be honest. But it was like so innovative. I've never seen a thought process, Susan, to your point about the thought that went into some of the pieces that were there. So when you think about, and then the other thing that I found really interesting at ICFF was the Cleveland students, I'm not sure what their school is called, they actually had a project where they had to make a disaster shelter that would sell for under $2,500, and they did it, and it was amazing. Did you see that, Veronica?
I missed that one.
Oh my God, it was incredible, and I have a picture of that. But what they are actually trying to get that to the attention of the right people. So Veronica, if you know any of the right people, it was really amazing, and it's much less expensive than what's on the market now. But
we do, and I'd actually like to talk to you about that offline if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. It was amazing. Listen to this, though, for everybody watching. 4 people can assemble it in 2 hours, and it has 2 beds, a dining table, a patio, a kitchen. It was incredible, actually. And this is in a disaster like Haiti or that type of situation, or Katrina or whatever it might be. And it's much less expensive than what's on the market. So it was very thoughtful. So the students of our country are really coming up with the thoughtful work. And of course, as they come out of those schools, they're the ones producing, a lot of the new products that, Jeffrey, that we're all, seeing. So I found the innovation really incredible. And then on a whole nother level, besides what the student work was, a couple of companies, one in particular out of London, and you all probably know this company already, but the name, it's a wallpaper company, and they're using tiny, tiny pin-dotted LED lights in wallpaper.
Yeah.
And do you know that company, Veronica? Me Styling?
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of different companies that do that. It's
so beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
gorgeous. And they've actually, they are, to your point earlier, they have used ICFF very much as a launch pad. Last year they were sort of clinging to the back wall in sort of a flat kind of area, and I saw them there and said, oh my God, this is so cool. They also do this with textiles, and then this time around they had a much more forward-facing, well-positioned booth space and the whole big new collection. They're great.
That was a real highlight for me. And then just, one last, did anybody see the chairs from the young woman that was from India that she had designed? Where I put a picture of myself in a pink one, but they were literally like a spandex fabric that, and again, I put them in this little Facebook album thing I'll share in the comment thread, but they were red and black, and then there was one that was hot pink, but they were very, very different forms. So I think there was a lot of, I don't know if y'all saw this, but I saw many playful forms of the things that were there. So there's a lot of experimentation in form. Like one of the chairs wasn't even what we would think of a chair. It hung from the ceiling and it was flat, and you actually had to hold the sides of it and put your rear end in it before the spandex. You'll see it. It looks like a giant black hanging spoon. It was wild. But it had, what was really exciting to me is that of all of the, I have to say, of the younger people, you know, coming into her space, they were so excited about it. The kids, the people, they wanted to sit in it. There was a ton of activity around that space. So it shows you that if furniture is innovative, that, you know, really people want to buy it, or they want to play with it, or they want to, you know, they want to be part of that. So I think that furniture can be as sexy as tech. You know, we just have to get it out there, you know, to let the retailers of our country and the, you know, the e-retailers know that we want to potentially buy that. And that's, you know, that's not my thing, but there is a lot of exciting things, so much excitement going on at ICFF. I was thrilled. And for me, one of the main differences of ICFF and High Point is that the High Point show will have, in general, American manufacturers that actually, to your point earlier, Veronica and Leanne's point, that are able to they have a logistics set up already to be able to deliver to whether it's an e-com retailer or brick and mortar retailer, and the manufacturing is also here in the United States. So they have that worked out. So you're gonna find more mainstream, bigger manufacturers in general at High Point, and a gazillions of them. And when you go to a show like ICFF or, you know, London, you're going to find those really artsy, you know, innovative, younger, not people, not age-wise, but, you know, younger companies where they've only been in business 2 or 3 years. They may not have all of that in place yet. They're just trying to get started in the market. So they're kind of feeding what is innovative in our country or in other countries as well.
Well, also, don't you find that the smaller manufacturers, these smaller companies, smaller, you know, even students, they have the ability, just like bloggers have the ability to just be quick and move quickly. Big manufacturers, they have to think about long-term trends, and it takes a long time for it to get through the manufacturing process, and to be able to see this innovative stuff before it really can even, you know, we were talking about this in an earlier show, but anything that you might see at ICFF, you might see parts or little inspiration trickle down into mainstream, you know, furniture design in 3 years or so, you know.
Exactly right. And really, at the end of the day, as we all know, it's about, you know, it's about the capital, you know, having that capital structure in place to where they can actually expand properly. And that takes, you know, it takes time to get that, and it takes demand to get that. And you know, people like Veronica who help, you know, get the word out about all these small manufacturers are doing them, you know, a huge favor. But it does, I think the missing part in everything right now is having a group of venture capitalists who are, you know, sort of on the furniture industry side, who are in conversation with people like, you know, all of us here on this call, so that they know, you know, who are the companies and what should they be supporting.
You know,
so right now, the
larger manufacturers to, you know, instead of, you know, coming out with something that's slightly influenced by something that is popular, to actually go to that designer and work with that designer and bring their product into the mainstream, which would be fantastic. I mean, you see it with big companies like Target making, you know, partnerships with designers. I'd love to see furniture take that on too, where they could, you know, partner with these.
Well, you're coming back to a finance think tank, and that was not something that was on the radar since we crashed so unceremoniously a few years ago. I think it was quite common to think about doing that before then, because there was that extra funding, and you simply did have the sort of this one office full of people that really weren't working on any particular projects, that were just kind of pouring it out there. And we need to allow the manufacturers to sort of go back to that and say, look, you can't keep playing it safe. You have to take some of this inspiration on board. You know, we had a chat in the Medena's talks that Jeffrey was hosting for us about trends, and I don't know that I agreed with everything that was said at that particular conversation in terms of macro and micro trends. I think we're actually in a world where micro trends are the more significant and the more important element in establishing trends, because the big brands will not jump through the hoops. They will not take the risks just yet to really simply barge ahead and come out with something cool where the little guys are. So you might have found, 3-4 years ago at an AD show or at ICFF, a guy that did a bunch of mirror frames and candlesticks in polished brass. And at the time, you would have probably said, ew, no, we kept those in the 80s, safely tucked away. And these are things, these are signals coming from this very flexible and very dynamic segment of the industry that is very much indicative of where we're going. So I have a lot of conversations with big brands who are saying, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? Should we do the brass? I'm like, yeah, it's in production, kids.
Veronica, it's so interesting. I have felt like that too. I felt like that for a few years, and I call them peripheral trends because they're trends, but they're quiet peripheral trends, and you don't have the big fat mainstream trends that you did years and years ago. I mean, you do, but you have it, I mean, of course, in the mainstream, but it's not as easy to detect, I think, as it used to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's the things that we picked up earlier, a little bit less chunky wood,
a little bit here. It's
fragile shapes. That is all stuff that, if somebody came to me, and I'm by no means a trends forecaster and don't claim that in any way, but that's kind of what I'm seeing is, really a sense of, no, we don't have to fill the whole space. We can kind of do things piece by piece and be thoughtful about it. As you said, mindful is a big word. And the other thing is absolutely listening to what and is their name the LED wallpaper my style, something like that? I can look it up. I'm sorry I'm missing out on that one. But yes, they've had a look that they've done for a couple of years now, but there's something to be taken away from this for larger manufacturers and also used in other products. Lighting integrated, even as little accents in products, should be, something that brands would consider doing. And so it's really important for, I've been doing blog tours since 2011, but I'd like to take a group of manufacturers around sometimes and say, come on, let's go to some of the cool markets.
But
look at what everybody's doing, because you can't do that in your corporate office with a focus group.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I think it also has to do with the trend toward personal expression. And that has to do with the creators and the artisans feeling more confident to produce their personal expression. So there's more innovation, there's more, the lines are blurred. Lines are blurred more, and when you have personal expression and you have artisans, and there's an energy that it's a little more difficult to see, but it's a good thing.
And to Leslie's point just now, this kind of stuff needs funding, because I see this in England a lot. England very often, and I always pick out England because it's very close to my heart, but also because it's such a perfect sort of microcosm of so many things that we do that we don't do here. I always find a lot of British design is designing for designing's sake. If they create a great new pattern, it's because they woke up one morning and thought they're going to do this pattern. There's no immediate sense of monetization at the end of that at all. And there you get creativity and the ability to sort of experiment with colors, with styles, with technologies. Same thing is true for a student. At that point, he doesn't have to worry about monetization. He can just create that disaster shelter and not care about functionality, production costs, lawsuits, and everything else. Really good place to be, but that has to be nurtured, and there are some initiatives. In fact, there are some very good digital initiatives that support that sort of things, like MADE, for instance. But at the end of the day, you need more financing, ideally from the big brands, to keep these people, to get those people to do what they really like to do, rather than worry about the whole logistics issue of it.
And I'm going to pop in there on that. Here's the problem. This is what I see as a problem. So for anybody that's listening, besides us that are sitting here talking. We all say these big brands. The big brands in the furniture industry don't have much money anymore, to be honest. They don't have a lot of marketing money, and they don't have a lot of money to experiment because of what happened in the year 2000. And when the recession hit, they had to absolutely cut back completely everything. They are just now really coming back online. And then look at what happened with the FBI companies, and they all went, out of business, etc. So you don't really have a lot of big players in the furniture industry who actually have the capital to invest in what's cool. What we really need is something that I feel like doesn't exist. Then on the other side, we now have like a One Kings Lane, or, we have all these bigger e-com players, the Amazons of the world. But the Amazons of the world are talking to the big manufacturers at High Point. They are not in conversation with the tiny guys that you represent, Veronica, or that, are part of the interior design community here. And
I can say, though, that part of that also is that the companies, like we have one that in particular that in our community, that they want to go through the showroom route. They don't want to come over here and do e-commerce. People, sometimes it's the company themselves, the small company themselves, that just doesn't have it in them to be able to do that.
Exactly. That is the issue. For the furniture industry, we need a sort of like an Etsy marketplace. It does not really exist. And then we need venture capital money to come together with that, so that and not only the money, but the logistical expertise. So we need a venture capital layer, and I'm talking about real venture capital, not just some rich person over here who has money, but I'm talking about the serious venture capitalists, the ones that fund a One Kings Lane or Gilt or whatever. Pinterest just got just had a valuation of $5 billion and raised another, whatever it was, $200 million through their venture capital partners. So who funds Pinterest? Who grows Pinterest but the home decor industry, right? So I'm thinking, why aren't those 5 venture capitalists that are out there in Menlo Park talking to us, right? They just don't know to talk to us.
Well, I think there's more to it than that. I think there has to be an underlying strategy, and the minute you try to create a strategy for something that is inherently not strategic,
exactly, Veronica,
you're going to have a really hard time performing. So if you and I and a bunch of us got together and said, let's make this happen, let's run this thing and put this out in front of some venture folks and promote artisans. The thing is that the X factor in this equation is in fact the artisan, because they all have a very different way of working. There's been so many brands, both in Europe and in the US, that I would have loved to grab and say, I don't even care, you don't have to pay me. This is really good editorial stuff for us. This is not about money for me at all. This is about me pushing you in front of the right audience. I had one maker in England tell me to stop promoting her because she didn't want to make that many teacups. Because she was selling this stuff left and right. So I said, but isn't that what that wasn't her goal? And so you have a lot of unknowns, and I think for an investor it's very important to make sure that there are very few unknowns and that there's a reliable structure that can be very scalable, and the scalability in something like that is not there, or very difficult to achieve, and that can be, that can certainly be a big red flag for those folks. That's why for me a lot of times it's a one-on-one conversation. They're always different conversations, and they're not scalable, and they're not going to make me rich, but I still like doing it just because it's great to see somebody fly in one of the brands you mentioned earlier. Lori, I think I've talked to when I was just at ICFF, and they're great. I think they could have the U.S. market at their feet if they wanted to. It's about their commitment to actually doing that and producing the numbers
right.
that they need to produce.
Well, before we go, I just really want to hit the event that Jeffrey did with Modenas, because I'm super excited to hear about that. Jeffrey, why don't you tell us all about your event?
It was a lot of
I think you're having a little audio issue.
I'm sorry?
You might have had a little audio issue.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. What I was saying was we really had a great time, and I want to thank Veronica Miller for giving us the opportunity to do the Modenas talk. And it was really, really exciting, really talk about, the creative process for fashion and interior design.
Oh, you're cutting out.
I'm sorry. To really see both sides of, fashion and interior design, what the process really plays. How does it play in the trend area? How does it play to the consumer? And so we were able to talk about everything, in terms of, trickle up, trickle down when it comes to trend, and to be able to see how fabrics are much better nowadays in both sides because of technology. It's just all different areas of how the creative process works, how it's much easier to work with in terms of. So I just thought it was very good. What is your take on this, Veronica?
Yeah, I want to hear how everyone loved our Jeffrey.
Everybody loves Jeffrey. That's just the bottom line, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Veronica, as someone who attended it, I attended it and listened to Jeffrey and you, but I want to say that, Veronica, you made an incredible point during the talks, which it was my biggest takeaway, to be honest, which was that designers have to be prepared to be experts at the processes that go into the materials that go into a design job in order to retain and retain their expertise in front of the consumer, that was going to be what was going to really add value to that design process over the long term. And you may want to add something else to that, but that's what I remember, and I thought that was very, very, very smart statement.
You know what? I'm actually kind of, that's going on my wall because it was one of my better quotes of the year. And you know what was interesting, though, is that the conversation didn't really go there right from the get-go, but it ended up there.
Right.
And I think, as often good conversations do, and that's what my little thing called Modenas Talks is all about. It is about conversation. And
I didn't get that point that Leslie was articulating. What is it, Veronica?
The ownership of the process of designers. So we were leading into the conversation. We had a fashion designer. We had Jeffrey there as interior designer. We had Will Arriaga leading the panel. He's a trade show and events organizer for fashion. And we had Britt Bivens there, who's a teacher at Parsons and also a trends forecaster. So this panel of four sort of led the conversation. We didn't really want to talk about here's one trend, here's another trend, because we knew that was just going to get contested because it really depends on who you're asking. So rather, we wanted to talk about the process, the creative process in design, in trends forecasting, in fashion. Where do you go? How do you pull back? But this conversation then ended up in really a lot of thoughts about owning the process, and not just your own design process specifically, but also owning the process of having your trades create custom work. Custom was used a lot because it's the essential ingredient for a design professional to protect their position and their value in the marketplace. But my feeling is that just standing there and saying, well, I will ask this guy to build this thing custom, and I will ask this guy to build that thing custom. You're not owning the process when you do that. You're at the mercy of those custom creators, whether they're millwork or architects or cabinet makers or textile makers. Doesn't matter. But all you're doing is you're still just sort of the shopper, even if now you're a sort of a custom, order maker, rather than actually knowing the process. I would like to see every interior designer really do some hands-on classes like you guys did with Thomas Mosier and actually learn how that chair is made, to have an understanding of what's possible, of what's not. Our event was hosted at Christopher Guy. Now, it was actually really interesting spending some time in this showroom for this brand that is so, definitely over the top glamorous, but at the same time we were talking about craftsmanship. We were talking about his traditional X-shaped chair legs that mimic the legs of a woman being crossed when she stands there casually. Well, those are really hard to achieve without that chair falling over. So just asking for that from a furniture maker is quite another matter, and that's where the difference in price will manifest itself. So moving forward in an industry that certainly has bumps in the road in terms of, where do consumers see the value of the design professional, not as their personal shopper, and also not as somebody who charges them by the hour, but somebody who owns the process of their project. And the more the designer knows in terms of the actual technical elements of what they're asking of others, the more valuable they become to that client. And I think that's kind of where we were going with that conversation.
I think that's huge. I mean, I think that if you are going, when it boils right down, designers become the salesperson for these products, whether they're custom made or whether they're manufactured, and knowing, that the process of manufacture helps you highlight the sellable points about the product also.
And I think it also really helps not only highlight, it's a little bit, to me, a little bit more than, and I'm not an interior designer, but a little bit more even in selling a product, but it's really helping the client understand why you're asking them to make the investment in that product.
Right.
And being able to explain that with eloquence and knowledge so that the client respects you as a professional, and as Veronica was just saying, where that client then understands that I've hired this design professional because now I truly do understand why I'm investing this in that custom piece. So,
right.
They're going to buy, whatever they need to buy anyway. That's kind of a given. But when you're actually trying to get them to purchase the best, if you can't help that client understand why it might be, and also relate that back to, okay, this one is made this way, this one is made this way, this one is made this way. Now you have a choice as to what range of investment you would like to make based on your needs and your budget. That is what, to me, a true design professional, beyond the creative process, can really offer to a consumer today. And it does take that owning the process, that in-depth knowledge that Veronica is speaking of, to be able to do that.
I think so too. Well, actually, we have to close out. I'm so sorry, but that was a great piece of wisdom, Leslie, because to get to end the show on. But thank you everyone for coming. Make sure that you visit us on interiordesigncommunity.com and on Interior Design Community on Google+. And circle Veronica Miller. She's got some great information. And she's always talking about Blog Tour. She always has new place you're going in the world. Where in the world is Veronica Miller?
At the beach if you need me the next 2 weeks.
Right. That's good. In other words, don't talk to her then. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Lori. Bye, everybody.